You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason.
Your co-host, Danny.
Fans, we have a fun show for you today. First, we'll get into a little bit of the NBA. We got some Formula One talk. That's right, Formula One is upon us. And we have an interesting trading card scenario for you. But first, Danny, right into the NBA, where the first couple of games after All-Star break has hit us. And the Milwaukee Bucks are 2-0. Impressive wins, one in Minnesota, one at Philly. I expected them to win the one in Philly just because Joel Embiid is not playing and the Sixers haven't been doing, obviously, as well without him. But the one in Minnesota impressed me. I watched that game pretty much, and the defense, especially in the third quarter, was on point. The offense was flowing, the ball was moving, there was energy in the ball, and in the fourth quarter, the Bucks kind of gave things up a little bit here and there. Minnesota closed the gap, but nonetheless, man, Dame Dollar showed up. Dame time showed up, man, big time in Minnesota, and they eked out the victory there. So the Bucks are looking pretty good defensively, Danny. I mean, I saw a stat in one of our threads here where defensively, especially when it comes to transition basketball, the Bucks went from last to first. And that speaks volumes. And so I was just looking at the standings, Danny, and right now the Bucks are in the third position, only one game behind Cleveland for the second position in the Eastern Conference. And if playoffs were to start today, being that the Bucks are in the third seed, they will play the Indiana Pacers in the first round. My mind kind of went to, with this defense that the Bucks have right now, could the Bucks beat out the Pacers? And before the coaching change, my thought would be no. But now with this defense, my thought would be this would be a great series. I could see the Bucks eking it out. But Danny, what say you about these Milwaukee Bucks coming off of All-Star break?
You have a new coach. He needs time to adjust. And Doc made that comment before the All-Star break about players paying attention, and I'm paraphrasing here and everything. Some being in Cabo and some being on the court. But this is the Bucks team we expected to play. And granted, too, it's been great matchups. They match up well with Minnesota and Philly being down in Embiid. That's a game you got to win, right? Even though it is on the road. And the talent they have, this is the team that you're expecting all season. Now, I will say, let's see if they can make a little run here. Continue to be consistent and not have up and downs, because you know how they can go sometimes, where they look like world beaters, like when they beat the Nuggets a couple weeks ago. And then they had those games like against Memphis, where Doc made that comment about the team checking out before the All-Star break. So you look at it, man, they're sitting in a good spot, honestly, for how bad and inconsistent they've been all year. They're still in the 3-hole. Cleveland can be had. Yeah. This is new territory for Cleveland. A little over 20 games left. This is where the pressure starts kicking in for this positioning and for seeding. Celtics, I think they should be good, in a good spot where they are in the 1. But there's no reason where the Bucks can't get that number 2 spot in the East, considering how they've been playing. But they do have a tough schedule coming up too. So I know it's one of the toughest in the NBA down the stretch. So that could play into this, but looking at it, man, that 2 spot should be for theirs for the taking.
And then let me just add on to that. So if they take the number 2 spot, okay, in the play-in tournament right now, which is the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seeds, you have Miami at 7, Orlando at 8, Chicago at 9, and Atlanta Hawks at 10. Let's just say the likes of Miami and Orlando comes out of that play-in tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say Milwaukee, if they were to be number 2 seed, could could go against the Miami Heat in that first round.
That's the matchup you do not want off the jump.
You don't want that matchup, man. And it's not to be saying we're scared of Miami, but dang, Miami, can I just shoot for, making the play, just making the playoffs? I don't get Miami from that standpoint, Danny. But if it's worked for them over the years, it's kind of like, this is just how we gonna roll. We gonna rest some players. We gonna rest some starters.
Jimmy Butler's suspended right now, so he's gonna get some more rest. And they're dangerous, man, because if they just sit around there and, like you said, meddle around where they're not going to be knocked out, because they're, based on the record right now, they're 31-25.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bulls, who are in the 9 spot, are 3 games under 500. They're 27-30. So Miami has like a nice buffer.
Yeah.
Between them and being out of the playoffs is what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. So they could just meddle around, win a couple games here, win a couple games there, get healthy, and then make their run.
And here's the thing with Miami. Just like you said, they can just meddle around, because right now they're 1 game behind the Pacers for a 6 seed, so that way they won't even have to worry about the play-in tournament.
Mm-hmm.
But Miami, I think, is so confident.
That goes also not only for the Bucks, but for the Celtics, because the Celtics do not want to see Miami in the first round either.
That's true too. But I think this Celtics team is a little different.
They are, but we know Miami. Miami, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but they match up really well with the Bucks and the Celtics, and they have that moxie about them when they get to the playoffs, where they just like, all right, now it's time to flip the switch.
Just as we talk about the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference, you have Minnesota and OKC tied right now for the number 1 spot, with Denver Nuggets only 1.5 games behind, Clippers 2.5 games behind at the 4 seed, and then you have Sacramento and Phoenix at the 5 and 6 spots, with the New Orleans Pelicans, Mavericks, Lakers, and Warriors in a play-in tournament. Are you kidding me? I can see Phoenix making a run here. I definitely see the Pelicans making a run here to get out of the play-in tournament. Same thing with the Mavericks. I can see them making a run to try to get out of the play-in tournament. The 2 teams to replace, I can see the Kings and even the Suns slipping down into the play-in tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be interesting. Lakers is going to be the play-in tournament, in my opinion. Same thing with the Warriors. I just see them being a play-in tournament period. Dan, what say you about the Western Conference?
Yeah, Jay, there's a half a game between the 5 spot where the Kings are and where the Mavericks are in the 8 spot. So there's going to be a lot of shifting and maneuvering now going on. And you look at Dallas, Dallas has actually been playing pretty well lately.
Yeah, yeah.
Kyrie has been really balling, and they've been, players been in and out the lineup for them too. And with them making those changes at the trade deadline, they may be dangerous if they can keep this going, because they did get some defensive help. And I agree with the Warriors and Lakers right now. I don't see them getting out of that spot, but they're both playing well too, because Golden State's won 8 of their last 10. The Lakers have won 7 of their last 10. Yeah, it's shaping up to be an interesting playoff run here. And the Jazz are sitting at the 11th spot, and they're 4 games under 500. So we talked about wiggle room in the Eastern Conference. That same goes for the West. There's been some good ball, actually, man, since the break.
That's because they know you only got 26, 25 games left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start making this run, making this push. And when you think about the 7 to 10 seeds, like if I'm the Lakers or Warriors, I'm like, we need to get the hell up on out of this play-in tournament situation
You're
because
right.
there's no telling what can happen here, Danny. I mean,
And it's
somebody,
extra games, Jason, on those old legs.
yeah, exactly. And I think the Warriors, they're gonna make this push. I don't know what's going on with the Lakers, man. They're just so up and down. It's gonna be tough. This is just gonna be a great run towards the end of the regular season, Danny, in the NBA. And now on to Formula One, and where they just wrapped up this past weekend the preseason testing, and there's been some clamoring via the ESPN article that the other drivers are already saying it's Max Verstappen's championship to lose, basically. The car is so far ahead that it's going to be playing catch up. And really at the second, third, fourth spots, that's where your competition really is going to be. And I would say this, Danny, this is disheartening to hear because the drivers are already defeated before the season even starts. And that speaks volumes, man. I mean, just to just how ahead and how far in advance the Red Bull team really is in their car. And I just think that there's something that needs to be said about the engineers of these cars. Before Red Bull, there was, of course, Mercedes, who had, 8 victories in a row of Constructors' Cup. And there's something to be said about going on these long runs, especially from the engineering standpoint. And I'll just say this, according to the article, they talked about how, and this is again an ESPN article, they talked about how Red Bull and Max Verstappen's car at the last race last year in Abu Dhabi, he won by 17 seconds. And last year, the average victory was 13.363 seconds. They're saying that this car this year may be one where there's a half-second difference, half-second difference each lap. Are you kidding me? Now, granted, one thing to keep in mind in these preseason tests, a lot of the teams, they don't want to, put everything out there. They don't want to show their full hand, if you will, show their full capabilities of their car and all. But it just speaks volumes when a lot of drivers, basically the whole grid, is saying it's his championship to lose. I think when it comes to football, they say that's why they play the game. So I think with driving, you have to almost have the same mindset. That's why you drive the races.
Yep.
And if I was these cars and some of these teams, because some of these teams have like the same engine underneath it all, just different names in terms of who's basically the team name. And I would just partner with some of these other teams and be like, you know what, y'all, we need to take down Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a joint strategy, take down Red Bull, man. I mean, just be like, one weekend, all right, Ferrari, Mercedes, let's work together to take down Red Bull. The following week, it could be like, all right, McLaren and Mercedes, why don't we go ahead and tag team and take down Red Bull? Something got to be done, man. But I'll say this too, Danny. I was able to watch a good portion, or maybe half the season of the Formula One race special on Netflix for this season. It was basically based on last season. They spun it up, made it available right before the start of this season, which was amazing. And one of the things I really enjoyed about it, not only the storytelling, but they talk about also the teams that are like 17th place on a consistent basis, 18, 19, 20th place. They talk about the struggles to get out from under those lower positions. And they also show the like behind the scenes. So when we talk about upgrades to a car and everything, and the meetings that they have, and the time that it takes, and the money that it takes, and the pressures that these teams are under because of sponsors want they don't want to be the 20th place. They don't want to be 18th place. They try to be number one. And if you don't make and show signs of improvement, these sponsors would be like, man, deuces. We trying to go ahead and get on a winning team or get on a team that is doing better than what we currently are right now. So I think one of the things I really love about this series is the behind the scenes, because I hear so much about the upgrades, and I'm always in my mind thinking, well, what does that all look like? What does that process look like? And they actually show engineers having these meetings and talking about how can we decrease, how can we make these subtle changes to decrease the time or make things flow a lot better so we can decrease, whether it's a second, whether it's a half second, all these seconds count. So that part was fascinating to me. Formula One will be back this coming weekend. And I am excited because I want to see how these cars have improved. And please don't tell me that this is going to be a 17-second win by Red Bull or Max Verstappen. Please don't tell me that. And if that's the case, that's going to, man, the whole season to me is going to be a replay of last season. Something I don't want to necessarily see or watch. So that's my Formula One take, Danny. Anything from you from a Formula perspective?
Yeah, I think too with that, Jason, it's execution on the actual track too, man. Like the pits. And if you watch, for those of you who do watch, Verstappen's very aggressive. So it takes one or two crashes and I'll knock him down a couple pegs, right? But it's some of the angles and things and the way he drives, I think intimidates a lot of the drivers. If you watch those races, and I think that's what a lot of that comes down to is his style. A lot of these guys can't adjust to that. And I don't know, man. I think it's one of those things where if he does do what they're expecting him to do and dominate the way, it'll take a lot of eyes off of Formula One. But there are those people that like the dynasty aspect of it, right? To see someone dominate and continue to dominate and do their thing. But it has to be on some of these teams, man, just to say, all right, because they're watching film. They got to see some of this stuff. They got to see how they execute. What's their action plan? What's their strategy to account for this? Someone has to say something. So that's why I want to see some of these interviews too. Like this first race, what's post race? What are they saying coming out of that race, depending on how Verstappen does? Because obviously everyone's shooting for him, but you can't touch it. You can't get him, then he's going to take off. So I just hope that it's closer than that. And it's actually an interesting race, this first one out. And I would like to see what these teams do to combat him and the team in Red Bull.
And I would say this, I think to that point, I believe Formula One has done this right in terms of putting out their Netflix special, Formula One's Drive to Survive. They put that out right before the start of the new season. And again, they showcased several teams that are in the 20th spot, the 10th spot, even the 10th spot and the 9th spot. And they showed how they're competing in chunks in their specific category. I think Formula One was smart to do that because in races, they don't necessarily focus in on those battles necessarily. They may highlight, there's a battle here for 10th position or whatever case may be. And then they go back to who's in the lead or the leader pack, if you will. Typically, they just take their eyes off of Max Verstappen and just let him ride out and everything, and then they look at what's the next chunk of close races or what have you. So I
Yep.
think Formula One was definitely smart to put out Drive to Survive on Netflix. So we'll see what happens in this first race, Danny.
Mm-hmm.
And now, fans, on to an interesting trading car scenario. Who we got, Danny?
So tonight's trading card scenario, Jason, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander Panini Donruss rated rookie card for Anthony Edwards NBA Hoops rookie card. Couple quick bios. Shai was the 11th overall pick by the Charlotte Hornets in the 2018 NBA draft out of Kentucky, and then was eventually traded to Oklahoma City. Two-time All-Star, one-time All-NBA, career averages 22.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 4.8 assists per game. Anthony Edwards, first overall pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 2020 NBA draft out of Georgia, two-time All-Star, career averages 22.7 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. Jason, who do you want in your portfolio?
Well, Danny, this was an interesting one here. In looking at Shai and Anthony Edwards, I like Anthony Edwards' body of work with respect to how he plays, the physicality. He is a shooting guard, listed as a shooting guard, 6'4", 225, man, but he has hops for days. You talking about catching bodies? He didn't call out more than a few bodies. And that is something impressive, man. But here's a concern I have with Anthony Edwards in Minnesota. I think the question for this to me, in terms of who to take my portfolio, the question for me is who would win a championship first?
Mm-hmm.
And although both teams right now, they're tied for first in the conference, which we stated earlier, Shai is actually getting more looks as an MVP candidate. The OKC Thunder, they're a young team, a young, hungry team. And I think they have the ability to take that next level even more so than the Minnesota Timberwolves. And so I'm going to make actually a team choice here. And to me, it's based on what team can get over the hump quicker. And I think the OKC Thunder can get over the hump a little bit quicker. There's going to be a learning experience there. But I think the OKC Thunder can even take this to another level if Sam Presti and the front office don't mess this up. And you talk about the time, and I looked at the times and where OKC Thunder and Minnesota Timberwolves played each other this year. And granted, there were, I believe a couple times Minnesota won. Well, I think it's been going back and forth, quite honestly. But Shai has scored close to 30 or over 30 points in all the games. That speaks volumes to me. So with that, I'm going with OKC Thunder and the team that they have around Shai to get over the hump here. I would take Shai's card and put that in my portfolio because I believe there's going to be of more value because of the MVP looks that he's getting right now. But once they get over that hump, I think you're going to see them in the conference finals sooner than later. So I'm going with Shai's card here. Who you got?
If you look at their career stats, they're like neck and neck. Shai's having a breakout year this year, and that's where I'm strongly considering his card because, like you said, it's the trajectory, right? And the team is on the upward trajectory. But then I look at the value of the card and the small market. That's where both of these dudes get, I think, kind of taken back because they're not nationally known players per se. We know them, they're great, but they're not household names because they're not on TNT all the time or ABC or ESPN. And I think that'll change after this year. But when I'm looking at the card itself and I'm looking at these two, I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards' card. And the reason I say it is because I think his game is more conducive to being that type of star player that we are used to in the NBA. He is a little smaller, but he like you said, he has the hops. Shai does too. Now, don't get me wrong. Shai's game is great, and he should be in the top for MVP voting because of what he's been doing this year. But I look at Anthony Edwards, and they have a great shot as well to make a deep run, depending on how things go, obviously. So and I'm a big Anthony Edwards fan, man. I've been a big fan ever since his rookie year. A lot of people doubted him coming out of Georgia. They doubted his work ethic, his want to play in the NBA based on some comments he made, coming in. And I look at that and I think he's taking it to the next level, and he still has untapped potential to, as he gets into his prime, to take it a step further and be a great player. And this may transition to him moving markets, because another point that you made as far as the age of the team, OKC is a young team. The Timberwolves are an older team with Conley, and then Gobert's a little older. So I'm going Anthony Edwards, rookie card. And this is very close for me because I like both players. But I'm going to roll with Ant.
Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.